In early China, structured systems of change existed prior to the dominance of arithmetic formalism. By the late second millennium BCE, variability was not expressed primarily as magnitude. It was organized as configuration. Change became legible through discrete states whose combinations were limited and repeatable. This is before logic, a history of rules before they were written. The text, later known as the I Ching, or Book of Changes, emerged gradually during the Zhou dynasty, building upon earlier divinatory practices. Its earliest transmitted layers consist of hexagram names and concise judgments, line statements, and philosophical commentaries accumulated over time. Archaeological discoveries, including silk manuscripts from Mawangdui, indicate variation in sequence and wording during early transmission. The received version reflects editorial consolidation rather than singular authorship. Earlier Shang dynasty divination relied on oracle bones. Questions were inscribed on turtle plastrons or ox scapulae and then exposed to heat until cracks formed. These fissures were interpreted as responses. Each fracture pattern was materially unique. The sign was inseparable from the singular event of burning and breakage. The I Ching differs structurally. Instead of interpreting unrepeatable crack patterns, it generates one figure from a predefined and finite set. The outcome does not depend on irregular material behavior. It corresponds to one of 64 established configurations. The interpretive space is delimited in advance. The system is constructed from two elementary marks, a solid line and a broken line. These lines are arranged vertically. 3 lines form a trigram. 6 lines form a hexagram. Because each of the 6 positions can assume one of 2 states, the total number of possible hexagrams is 64. The combinatorial structure is complete. The original method for generating a hexagram employed 50 yarrow stalks. 1 stalk was set aside, leaving 49 for calculation. The stalks were divided into 2 groups. From one group, a single stalk was removed and placed between the fingers of the left hand. The remaining stalks in each group were counted off in sets of 4. The remainders from both groups, together with the single stalk previously removed, produced a number. This procedure was repeated 3 times to generate a single line. The resulting value determined whether the line was broken or unbroken, and whether it was designated as stable or changing. The distribution of outcomes is unequal. Certain line types occur more frequently than others. A young line remains fixed. An old line is marked for transformation. When a line is designated as changing, it reverses in the derived hexagram. The second figure is therefore produced through rule-governed substitution within the same matrix of 64 forms. The procedure depends on regulated division and remainder counting enacted physically. Although not expressed as written equations, the operations are numerical and constrained. The stalks are manipulated according to fixed sequences. The result is determinate within a limited range. The logic is procedural and repeatable. Each completed hexagram consists of 2 trigrams, a lower trigram and an upper trigram. The lower trigram is traditionally associated with what is internal or foundational. The upper trigram is associated with what is external or manifest. Meaning arises not only from the 6 lines individually, but from the structured relation between these 2 3-line units. This relational structure is visible in paired hexagrams whose components are inverted. Hexagram 63 places water above fire. In traditional commentary, This configuration is associated with a condition described as ordered yet unstable. Hexagram 64 reverses the arrangement, placing fire above water. This configuration is associated with a condition not yet completed. The difference lies not in the elements themselves, but in their vertical ordering. Position alters structural implication. In this way, the system models complexity through relational hierarchy. A hexagram is not merely a stack of 6 marks. It is the interaction of 2 ordered trigrams, whose placement defines the condition represented. Meaning is constrained by configuration rather than by magnitude. Each hexagram is accompanied by a judgment and 6-line statements. Interpretation depends on positional hierarchy. The first line occupies the lowest place and is often treated as incipient. The 6th line occupies the highest and is often treated as extreme. The 2nd and 5th positions are frequently regarded as central. These positional distinctions constrain interpretation. The line statements further specify conditions attached to particular positions. They delineate circumstances under which action is appropriate, restrained, or deferred. A line statement such as "Hidden dragon, do not act," associated in later tradition with the first line of hexagram 1, functions as a constraint tied to a specific positional state. The text restricts the range of permissible response within a given configuration. When one or more lines are designated as changing, the resulting transition to a second hexagram introduces temporal dimension. The first figure represents the present configuration. The second represents the configuration toward which conditions move under the rule of reversal. Transformation proceeds through defined substitution, not through continuous measurable gradation. Because the number of possible configurations is fixed, every consultation yields a state within a complete set. Contingency is categorized. A situation is assigned to a defined configuration and, where applicable, to a defined transition. The trigrams were later associated with recurrent natural categories such as heaven, earth, water, fire, thunder, wind, mountain, and lake. These associations serve as classificatory anchors within the interpretive tradition. Their combination generates layered relations of opposition, complementarity, and precedence. During the Warring States period, multiple intellectual traditions engaged with the text. Confucian commentators emphasized ethical alignment and cultivated responsiveness to circumstance. Other traditions emphasized patterned transformation within natural processes. Attribution of the 10 wings to Confucius remains historically uncertain. What can be established is that philosophical elaboration expanded while the 6-line combinatorial structure remained unchanged. The durability of this structure contributed to its institutional role. Consultation of the text followed recognized procedures, and decisions aligned with its judgments derived legitimacy from adherence to established form. Authority was grounded in method rather than personal assertion. The combinatorial matrix remained stable even as interpretation diversified. Within this framework, the concept later described as shy, often translated as timeliness or situational tendency, became significant in classical interpretation. The hexagram was consulted to determine the structural character of the present configuration. Action was evaluated in relation to that configuration rather than treated as isolated initiative. The system provided orientation within pattern change rather than prediction through measurement. In the 17th century, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz encountered diagrams of the hexagrams through Jesuit correspondence. He interpreted them as expressions of binary arithmetic and regarded them as confirmation of his own work on numerical representation. This interpretation identifies a structural parallel, but does not establish continuity of origin. The arithmetic reading is retrospective. The limits of the system are clear. It operates within 64 discrete states. It does not represent magnitude, proportion, or cumulative growth in the manner later mathematical systems would. Early textual layers are terse, and later commentaries introduce philosophical overlays whose original meanings cannot always be reconstructed with certainty. Archaeological evidence confirms development and revision over time. Yet the structural achievement remains evident. The I Ching formalizes variability through finite combinatorics, positional hierarchy, and rule-governed generation. It demonstrates that change can be organized without continuous measurement. A culture can encode transformation through discrete configuration and constrained substitution. Within the broader history of rules and systems, this represents a distinct mode of abstraction. Rather than grounding order in numerical magnitude, it grounds order in patterned relation within fixed limits. The world becomes navigable as a structured field of states whose transitions are formally delimited. The 64 hexagrams endured across political shifts and philosophical reinterpretations. The generative procedure endured. The structure remained constant, even as explanatory frameworks evolved. In the next episode, we will examine when number became structure, Pythagorean ontology, and how numerical relations were treated as foundational principles within early Greek thought. We will consider how number was positioned not merely as a tool of calculation, but as a basis for describing order itself.